ZeroState with Jack Lloyd, where philosophy matters.
Hey, what's up, everybody? It is Jack Lloyd here, and I'm excited that this is the second ever stream of ZeroState. And I can't believe I finally got to this point to actually put all this together and make this happen. So I'm very excited to be able to actually interview guests and have something more regular to talk to people, talk about what's going on in the Liberty sphere. And today's guest is a very special person who I have personally met and hung out with a number of times, and I'm really excited to introduce him. But before that, just a quick reminder, the I Did Not Consent music video, that is me and Fuzz next music video project, is funding right now on Indiegogo, and we are trying to make a hard-hitting song for liberty against all the tyranny. It talks about all different types of real-world things that people can go and look up themselves and check out and see how bad the government has been, especially, the past 2 years, of course, with all the lockdowns, shutdowns, and that madness of mandates and things like that. So again, if you're trying to push back the culture and actually have more creative content out there that is truly principled, pro-liberty, calls out nature state in ways that nobody else really is doing. And I can tell you this, so many artists these days are just caving in and giving into tyranny, and, former rebels are becoming, sycophants of the state. Like, they literally, once the great rebels of the past, like Rage Against the Machine, right? Oh yeah. Now they we need more, lockdowns and shutdowns and stuff. So it's crazy. So if you want to support a music revolution against that, definitely check out our campaign and help us make a competitive, mainstream style music video. So without further ado, I'm about to bring on the special guest here. His name is Ronald Tracy Robison. He is the Libertarian Party of Duval County candidate for city council in District 8 of Jacksonville, Florida, which makes him a Florida man. So welcome, Tracy. Glad to have you on the show.
What's going on, Jack? How's it going?
It's going really good. It's been a great day so far. Got to sleep in.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like we were saying before, before we got on the show, one of those fun games I try to play every week is how much sleep on average I can get overnight. Because, I work overnight and everything, and it's pretty tough to try to catch up on everything with the campaign that's going on. Can I get 5 tonight? Can I get 6? Or can I get 4? And try to get to that 6, that sweet spot, so I can get up and not be so, looking like a caveman. I just discovered fire. So everything's been going pretty good on that part. I got 6 hours of sleep last night, so I'm ready.
Yes, I could not do 6 hours. I need my 8 hours of sweet sleep every night at least. So how you do that is very impressive. Yeah.
8 hours. Wow. I got, man, that's a whole nother level I got to reach right there. I haven't had 8 hours since I was a babe.
Wow. It would feel like probably for you going to another dimension, being able to sleep that much. Like, what? Wait, is this the same reality that I'm in?
Exactly right. Well, no, really, tell you the truth, if I get too many hours of sleep, I'm not gonna get up. That's the thing about it. If I get 8 plus, I'm gonna be tied to the bed. It's just not. And then I'll probably be more prone to what they call those things where you sleep paralysis. You know what I mean? And so I got to try to, 7 is it's cool and everything, but 8 plus, I'm not getting up. That's what it is. It's gonna go to 22-hour nap. So
right. Well, yeah, I get it. Some people have different types of sleep rhythms, and once they hit a certain point, then it's just too much. So I totally get that. But speaking of which, and sleep, it seems like you've been having a good success here with your work and things like that. Could you explain a little bit of what you do outside of your candidate and political runnings things? Could you tell us a little about that?
Things outside of campaign, like the work and things of that nature.
Yeah, what kind of work you normally engage in, because you're not just a leech off the state here.
Right, exactly, right. So yeah, that's the message I want to convey to everyone that's around us. And it's not us who are leeches to the state. It's pretty much the local government leeching off the denizens of Jacksonville, Florida, that I have the biggest problem with. And just go a little background about who I am. I work as an inventory specialist for General Electric. I work for a third-party distribution center called Home Distribution. And I guess it's the thing about General Electric. They went bankrupt at one point, and they kind of stretched themselves a little too thin. So in order to recover, they hired third-party, things of that nature to kind of handle their stuff. And Holman, it's not a manufacturing, it's distribution plant where they pretty much, whatever boxes come in, they get stored and they get shipped right out. With that being said, I used to operate all the vehicles, Basiloid, clamp, forklift, all these type of things. And I got that from my background working in Safariland, which is a ballistics maker. They make bulletproof vests, utilities, stuff like that. And Yeah. So once I got up into being an inventory specialist this past this like last year, it put in perspective about the logistics of things, how they move, and how much it costs for these things to move. When the supply chain really started getting messed up, we see that there's so many millions of dollars that's not being moved in any way, shape, or form, and we get directly affected by that. Not to say that there was a big slowdown in operating capacity. It was still fairly consistent because some guys, they were still able to get their stuff shipped out. But for example, we have a map, big behind map that shows where like how much freight is on those ships over in California and Baltimore, all these type of ports. The highest one, the highest offender is California. We have a big issue with California. It's like millions and millions of dollars worth of stuff over there that's just kind of sitting there. Jacksonville's maybe like $4,000. You know, I mean, it's really not that much because in Florida, maybe from Florida, we have a little bit more common sense, But so, we open it up and we have things coming in a lot higher capacity. So we're blessed to have that operation being done so we can have things come in. But it really put in perspective like the way I approach people, the way I approach my campaign is pretty much the way I would approach my GM or my supervisors about the stuff that's coming in, how we can safely put things in their proper place and do it safely, more efficiently, and how things could work. So it kind of put in perspective about that, the logistics of it all. Because once you have a perspective on how the supply chain issues are messing up, the lockdowns are coming in, it really kind of compelled me to not only be a warrior, in my job, but why can't I just do this everywhere else? Why can't I just do the same thing, for the campaign, and just talking to my next door neighbor about how this all affects us and why people are not getting things that they want, because it affects everybody. And I try to convey that with my message in Jacksonville with my campaign.
Well, that's really great that you got that experience to be able to see firsthand the effects of the lockdowns and the shutdowns and how that's disrupted so many people's lives and their ability to get needed items, and the cost increases too in that process of just having stuff sit out in docks in California, and not be able to do anything because the government's rules and restrictions have made it so difficult for people to actually comply and move product through. So that's really incredible that you got that firsthand experience. So
and before that, not to mention, there's pirates out there that's going out to these ships and just taking and just really just taking stuff, ramshacking it. I mean, it's really, there's a lot of drama that goes around. That we get, like the messages that we get, from these facilities. It's really an amazing thing, and it's really wild. So go ahead. I just kind of want to put that in there because it's crazy.
Yeah, no, I mean that's a great point of like all the economics of the unseen, unintended consequences of just seeing that, okay, if you're putting all these ships out there and they're having to wait to dock, there's opportunity for bad actors to go and, and be like, oh, okay, well, let's try to sneak onto these, ships that are just having to sit out there and try to, grab some merch. I mean, absolutely. It's a serious issue. So when it comes to your advocacy and what you're really passionate about, where do you see your talents being used best for change in your community? Where are you seeing, the government tyranny really coming down, and where you can come in to fight and try to push back on that?
The place that I can see myself pushing back on it is what I'm pretty much doing right now, being a lot more active in the community and showing them the dichotomy of what confiscatory tax regulations does, and how we can bring a free market solution to these issues. And for example, me and Eric Parker, he's a candidate running in District 2. And matter of fact, he's the one that inspired me to go ahead and get into running for this candidacy. He's seen the potential in me. He said, "Look, man, you got a voice. You need to go ahead and utilize it." And that pretty much kind of sparked the thing in my head to not have this barbershop talk all day, because I get a lot of anxiety just talking about this stuff. But it turns to a whole nother conversation when you say, "Let's go initiate this process." But with that being said, like what I did this past Saturday and this weekend with the help of the great D.L. Cummings, our chairman, vice chairman Marcus Reeder, and the team that we have, he will send us, potholes around the city of Jacksonville. It's like, hey, man, what we can do to go and utilize this volunteerist philosophy and put it into action more of in a praxis style. We go here, we fix it up, and then we show the people, hey, man, this is all possible that we can do for ourselves. And it shows the overall message of local government that we essentially don't need you, for any of these services. We can do these things for ourselves. And a testimony from a person that came right after we was done fixing up that pothole. I mean, even before when we were just filling it up, putting down the asphalt and everything like that, people driving by saying, thank you, honking the horn. And we're just like, wow, and it was really cool. The guy came, or a lady came right afterwards and said, man, my tire just got messed up from this pothole just last night. I got this new car last week and look at it. I don't even know why she was even on the road. I mean, the tire was completely almost like just torn, and you see the wiring, on the side of the tires, and it messed up her rim too. And we're just looking like, we don't even know why you're on the road, but I'm glad we can help, and so she thought we worked for the city government at one point, and we told her, well, no, we are Libertarian Party of Duval County, and yeah, we told her a lot of things that we're about and what we're doing actively right now. But that's just one aspect of it. And that's just filling potholes, because if they're going to make us, try to make sure these vehicles are up to par to get on the road, they got to make sure that the roads are on par with the cars that are on the road. Because Jacksonville, to its detriment, is a very, very car dependent city. It takes 45, not 45, it's an exaggeration, but 25 minutes to get to the average place around there, and it's really ridiculous. And so there's a lot of traffic going on in these streets, and we pay so many millions of dollars in taxation on infrastructure. But if you're going to do that, you better make sure that the streets are paved with gold at least, so that we can go and drive and get these things done. But it's not. So part of the campaign that we're moving forward with is go ahead. I say, hey, if you're in Jacksonville and any parts of the city, take a picture of it, send it to me, and and the location of it is and where it's at, and then we'll do the proper way of doing stuff. Because the anarchist in me is just like, it's like, bro, just go ahead and do it. But the candidate in me is kind of like, okay, let's go ahead and just call the city and report it at least, so we can build a case against them and say, hey, we've done the thing that we're supposed to do. We notified you, and it takes about 3 or 4 days, excuse me, to give them a grace period of when they should respond to it. But if they don't do it during that time, we go ahead and move right in. And it will show the citizens about how slow and sluggish that government is. And the thing about it is, they're going to take their sweet time. They already got your money. They don't have the incentive to go ahead and get the job done like they're supposed to. On the flip side, where we're coming from, it's about saying, we make a contractual agreement between two consenting parties about getting a job done. If the person doesn't get it done, then they just don't get paid, because the free market is a lot more harsh than, the confiscatory, socialized way that we're doing things. If you don't do your job as you've agreed to with this agreement, then you're just going to be cast to the wayside. You're going to be put in the bottom of the barrel until we get somebody else with the resources that are available who will utilize it in a proper way. And there's another thing about this company that we're bringing in called Recyclops. Recyclops is trying to expand in Jacksonville, Florida, and there's a lot of drama with the waste management there in Jacksonville, Florida, where we're being taxed about $13 a month for the property taxes to get this stuff picked up. But people are not getting it picked up for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks. Did I mention weeks at a time for this trash to get picked up? And it's ridiculous. So we're paying the city for them to make a slum village out of us, and of course it lowers the property value down, and it's just crazy because the rental rates are going up exponentially. Jacksonville is number 9 on the most highest raising rents in the union, and it's pretty bad when you consider that we're just leaving trash everywhere, and we're supposed to pay for these extra rates and fees on this property that's being devalued because of their incompetency. So what Recyclops does, it's an independent company that goes in and says, hey man, for like a subscription fee on Netflix, for they say $13 a month for every other every other week they come in, they get their stuff up, and you pay a little bit more for a weekly transaction. They go ahead and they get it and they put it into an aggregate zone, and then they haul it off to the proper place to be disposed of. And we're paying the same rates for them not to get picked up at all by the city. And again, it's another free market solution that says, hey, we have an alternative to these things, and it can be done at the time that you want them to get done. And hey, it'll put a lot of pressure on the city government to reconsider their policies and what they're going to do with the city of Jacksonville once they see that competition is around. So we're just here to bring that competition, much needed competition for the city.
Yeah, I'm just going to have to say from here on out, when someone says who will build the roads, I'm just going to say Tracy. Tracy's going to build the
I mean, why? I mean, why not, right? I mean, because if you see the issue, you might as well just go in, look up, how to fix this thing, how to do this stuff, or talk to a professional who's already had the experience and the know-how to do these things. And we just go ahead and initiate that process. I mean, it's just as simple as that. It's a process of thinking locally, acting locally. And if you then, like I tell people, if the God's imbued within you the knowledge of the problem, then that's a responsibility of yourself to get that problem fixed. So yeah, and to connect with the right and proper people to do the job. I'm not saying just go and be a pothole vigilante, just off the cuff. Do it responsibly and seek professionals with the know-how to do these type of things. And hey, that's what it is. And it was just so easy. I mean, we just used 350 pounds of asphalt, a brand called QPR. We bought some, and just took 30 minutes to do just a 30-minute job, just putting it in there. Of course, getting all the gravel and all the crap out, and putting it in. And I had a lot of fun. I don't know about anybody else, but it was a good time for me. It was fun. Just using these is always pretty fun, and get the thing level it out, and it's just really, really cool. And then my chairman, he would follow up with us about the pothole and make sure that everything is copacetic with it. And it's been pretty amazing. And it just kind of just lighting all these gears in my head about what else can we do, because anybody can just talk on the computer, on the television, kissing babies and changing diapers for for votes and things of that nature. But if you're just bringing results in a very practical fashion, then it changes the conversation. It really changes the game, and we're getting a really, really good response from the city. And I just hope to double down on that, capitalize off of it, and say that it's bigger than just votes. It's bigger than just trying to get on people's good side. It's look at what we have to offer in exchange for your votes.
Right. Well, what I really like about what you're doing is that you're not waiting for the government to have a solution. You're not saying elect me and then I'll solve the problems. You're saying we're going to bring the solutions before whether I'm elected or not, or whatever you vote for me or not. I'm here to already show how inefficient and corrupt government is, and I'm going to take the human action needed to build a real sustainable solution that shows others, hey, these problems can be fixed. Look how easy it was to do. What is the government even doing with your money? And I think that what you're doing should be an inspiration to everybody else out there who is working in the political realm. Again, it's not my personal favorite, but I do understand the value of it. And I think that what you're doing is actually one of the best models from which to work, because it's actually getting people to think about how they can solve problems outside of the state, how they can live outside the state. And in the process, at least they're supporting somebody who is providing those solutions outright. You're not waiting to see, I wonder what they'll do. I wonder if they'll keep their word. It's like, no, they're already keeping their word about, hey, I really want to see this change materialize. So I think that what you're doing is fantastic. And I think that it's desperately needed as a model to share with everybody else who's in this realm, trying to show what libertarian solutions can look like in a free market, and also bring to the table other companies and other people who can help provide those solutions. So I think that's brilliant. Yeah. Is there anything else that you'd like to work toward or change? Is there any other opportunities that you've seen that maybe, again, not something you have to do right away, or just maybe something like, this could be another possible solution, just like you've done with the pothole filling?
Overall, I'm hoping to build up towards a mindset of the nullification and really secession. I mean, that's pretty much all that there is. Is to decentralization, secession, and bring in more conversation about how it'll be much better and much more efficient to separate ourselves from these powers that be, who just pretty much keeps invading on our privacy, invading on our liberties to do what we really want in this amount of time. And really, that's pretty much it. Because what I'm seeing in the state of Florida overall is an uptick and a whole niche of people of faith, Floridian secessionists, and people who just want to just separate from all this mess. Because we're tired of waiting for legislation to be moved. We're tired of these empty promises of getting this and that done. We're seeing all these possibilities happen without the solution. And we know that we can do it without them. And Jacksonville is a little more of a tougher fight, because being a libertarian, there's a bigger burden of performance, that we have. That's why I stress so much on go ahead and performing and bringing these solutions so that it'll open people up to the possibilities of such things later on down the line. I'm doing a lot of writing, doing a lot of research, and doing a lot of public speaking. When I was putting up those videos on my campaign page, it was pretty much me practicing and rehearsing myself from when I started talking to people up in the front. Because you see the video about when I started off back in, I think it was June, when I first came and announced my candidacy to the Libertarians of Florida. I was a little, all that stuff. Kind of, being so, what is that word? Just
New?
yeah, being fresh, greenhorn, no, green as hell, greenhorn
Green?
as hell, amongst all these giants in the room, man. It's like, man,
Yeah.
I'm supposed to, be in the same place with these people and and talk to them. Of course, it's very empowering to be in the midst of these people, but again, I guess the intimidation factor pretty much came in because I kind of felt that weight. But it was one of those things where it's not scary per se, but it's one of those very empowering and encouraging things to go ahead and I'm gonna prove myself. And but really it's bigger than that. It's just pretty much this is the crux of my campaign, is having the liberty to be the best of yourself, having the liberty to be civilized, having the liberty to be and the freedom to be a custodian of civilization, the way that, because without government, without these bureaucrats making decisions for us, people forget that we laid down the foundation of civilization as we know it today before these even came into the picture. And I remember the interview, the first episode that you had with the Christian anarchist, and which was really good. I really enjoyed it a lot because y'all spoke on something I commented on about the unilateral mind frame that government puts people as if they're supposed to be their God and supposed to just magically make these things happen. A comment is like, this is idolatry on the highest scale, because once you let them diagnose the problem, now you give them the power to define what the solution is for that problem. Once you give them the legwork to give you the solution for the problem, they can move the goalpost how any way, shape, or form, no matter how ridiculous it may be. It's a prime example of the COVID-19 that just popped off, and they say, hey, this is what this is. We should be doing that. Couple weeks or whatever, put the mask on, everything's going to be just fine. And then 2 years later, return to get vaxxed or you're fired, from your job. And where I am, they're putting in vaccination protocols for healthcare workers. So now we're perpetuating this, the shortage of employees with the influx of patients that's coming in who don't even have, this thing they're talking about, and it's from other issues that stemmed from government intrusion into people's lives. It could be anything. It could be, high blood pressure, heart problems, inflammation, whatever. But they're creating these protocols that condemn innocent lives and taking away their chance to really have a chance at life. Like this guy, I was looking on Twitter I was on Twitter, and the article came up by this guy who needs a heart transplant desperately. He's fighting for his life, but he's denied that because he's not vaccinated. And I was like, this is really inhumane. And you would be surprised at how many people are commenting saying, well, that's what he chose, well, he made his own bed, all this type of stuff. And it's like, how far are people willing to go with this, this new reality that's just been constructed? Because this is not normalcy. This is not normal. And so it's really ridiculous. So overall, as far as what plans are moving forward, is to put in mind that we have so many things that we can solve on ourselves on a much independent scale. As far as healthcare goes, you have direct primary care. And there's many of those facilities in Jacksonville, Florida, that I'm going to start really flourishing and perpetuating for people. Because, a real close friend of mine, he went to the hospital to get checked on high blood pressure, and doing really simple process that ended up coming out to be $800 for just a checkup. And he's like, yeah, no wonder I'm going in there and they keep telling me that I have a problem, is because all the stress and anxiety and the coercion and duress that I'm under when they're telling me about these fees, about a problem that I really don't. He feels like really healthy. He's awesome. He's doing this, that, and a third. He may have had maybe a little issue before, but they're going to keep telling him that he has a problem so he can keep coming back, and all the stress that they're putting him under, perpetuating the issue, really. And so I was like, hey, just cut off the middleman, cut off the insurance, and just go ahead and go to a family doctor with a personal connection. Same thing, a monthly subscription. And you get all the access to the medical facilities and the things that you really need to get your health taken care of by someone who actually cares, who's not going to be overwhelmed by the patients because of the insurance companies paying for them already. So these have like these influx of patients coming through is going to be at a moderate pace and a most essential pace for them to actually do their job, so they don't be tired out of their freaking minds. And it's not going to be such a long line of people that need help who's got to wait and make appointments for next month, next year, or whatever, because it's not in a socialized model, but in a much more privatized and a free market model. So that's the biggest goal that I want for this campaign, is for it to grow into that level. And hopefully, I'm not going to say hopefully, I'm going to say what will happen, because the attitude of saying hopefully this or hopefully that, it's never going to happen. We just got to go in and speak it into existence and make it upon yourself and saying, look, I'm already in office. I'm already a city councilman. I'm already this person, because if I go into the mind that I'm already the person that I need to be, then the results are going to come and show as such. And so, yeah, that's pretty much the long-term goals with it. But what I'm seeding in right now is showing the possibilities of what could happen. And I make sure I make a note of that when I make these videos. Like, look what we can do right now. We don't have to wait for this, this rigmarole, So yeah, hopefully that answered your question.
Oh, definitely. Awesome. And on that note, with, talk about the state of Florida as a whole, and, how much Florida, at least culturally, socially, in the media, stuff like that, is promoted as the freer place because it's so dangerous and, there's no lockdown and stuff like that. How do you plan to compete with that messaging from the Republicans, where they have this kind of media bias lens that, oh yeah, the Republicans are the people who actually want freedom and they're anti-lockdown, anti-mandate? How do you plan to stand out from their messaging and take it to the next level? How do you distinguish yourself from them?
Man, it's pretty much what we've been talking about, still. I mean, it's just that they're still waiting for legislation to move so they can make things happen, where we're just going to take the step a little further in order to stand out. I mean, yeah, sure. And I got love and there's a lot of Republicans in Jacksonville, Florida that we talk to on a regular basis, but there's still that because as far as my journey of being a libertarian and being, essentially an anarchist, but, I understand that there's some things I have to, because really being on the ancap team, I had to, my chairman always tells me, I had all these things, I'm going in, I'm gonna do this and I'm gonna do that. It's gonna happen like that. And he was like, yeah, slow down, kind of slow down and he let me know that you're playing a different game now. You're not on the activist side right now. You're going to more the politician side. You have to he never said compromise, but he always told me you have to think on a different way now, a different wavelength. And because people are not on the type of bandwidth that we're on concerning that. So what I have to do is pretty much doing what I'm doing today, bringing a way where I can't just sit there and talk about agorism, talk about these type of things. It has to be in something that's a lot more palatable for the people to be receptive to the message that I'm sending, even to the Republican Party, especially African American Republicans that are in Jacksonville, Florida. They're very still kind of waiting on the government to give them the solutions that gave them from the people that gave them the problems in the first place. And I'm just like, hey, yeah, sure, that's all fine and dandy, but how about we just go a little bit further, and that's pretty much what that is. And of course, Ron DeSantis, he's really great. He's a great governor. I respect him a lot. And some things, of course, I don't agree with him on every little thing, but as far as what he's doing to at least give the beacon or the message of a much more, I guess, liberty-oriented solutions to the issues. These anti-mandates, which is pretty cool. And he's really hated by leftists, which is all good. Leftist tears, they're very delicious. And so, as far as Republicans, it's like we have so much more in common. And people on both sides of the aisle, both Republican and Democrat, we have so much more in common than we realize. And when I approach them with these things, I just let them know that this is what we have. And like, as far as critical race theory is concerned, for example, I was like, what do you want to do about critical race theory? Of course, I'm not a fan of it. It's evil. But the bigger question is about what are we going to do about the taxation that we have in Florida? They uptick the sales tax to 7.5%. as opposed to just 7%, so they can put it into these schools to fix them up, fix the infrastructure. But of course, millions and millions of those dollars open it up for fraud, going to these private charter schools where they're just using it for their own means that people can't track where it's going, but there's no record of it helping the children actually. It's like, what if we just uplift these tax burdens to put it to more to your model, and how we say, hey, this is how about the unschooling model? What about school choice? What about different avenues of learning that'll be conducive for the child's learning experience? That is not going to condemn them for not getting to a certain tier under a certain period of time, or people who are auditory learners, people who are visual learners, people who are, who write things down, who are good with their hands. They need something that's conducive for them, that they have to choose for themselves based on their interests and their skills and their talents. Because, so they get to people like, people like us, we failed so many times because we were brought up in such a rigid way of learning that we had to try to, figure things out much later. And if we would just nurture the talents of children when they're at their infancy stage and when they're developing, then it will be much more better for society as a whole, because they'll know for themselves where they fit and what they can contribute to the overall population. And so that's like one of those things that I mentioned to them, because it's not just this rigid unilateral thing of, we need to put these kids back into school and do all this type of stuff. Republicans, they want to have the children back up in the schools and have them running again, because of the mask, whatever. They want to just say, hey, put them back into school. But I'm saying, hey, why public school, period? Like, why should this be the only option available for them? And that's why I'm saying just go a little further, because whether you want to be Republican or Democrat, you're still working on the wings of the same bird. And I'm saying just do away with the bird and just think in a much more, right-brained or a little bit more amorphous solution to the issues. It's a lot more flexible than we think. And that's what I'm trying to let people know. Matter of fact, there's a young lady named Anisha Merriweather. She is a champion of school choice, and she's in Jacksonville, Florida. I plan on talking to her. But it'll be really cool if y'all have a conversation, like all three of us, talk, and we talk about these solutions, because she got out of the streets of Jacksonville by way of school choice, having the opportunity to go from one area to the next, and so she can excel in her education, go from hate learning to loving to learn, having a love for knowledge. And imagine if we just go, like I said, a little further and say, how about we just get them out of the picture, period? Because like you say, there are a lot more healthier ways to learn on a daily basis. So that's just one of the examples that I would give to the to stand myself out of the Republican Party, is to just go a little further and consider possibilities without the intrusion of government. Because like you say earlier before, it's like a mantra now. You let them have the solution to the issues that they cause in the first place, then you're going to be trapped within that model, and things are not going to get done because you're still waiting on their framework to give you the permission to say, okay, you can do this now, you can do that now. And that's what we have to get ourselves out of.
Yeah, I think that nails it on the head there, especially the idea of, differentiating yourself by saying government's not the solution. Let's think outside the state, because with a lot of what the Republican leadership has, done in Florida, it's always still revolved around central planning. I mean, they're the ones saying, oh, we're going to save you by putting the monoclonal sites, out, and they're going to direct how it goes. And, without us, you wouldn't have these treatments and things like that. Yeah. So, it always is roping back into the idea of, oh, government's the savior. See, if it wasn't for this strong governor, you wouldn't have these things. But in reality, it was his mandates and emergency order in the beginning of everything that led to the rationalization of the locality emergency orders. So, he kind of rubber stamped the rest of the emergency orders that took place in the relative, counties. So I think that that's really, a strong point of what you're bringing to the table, is reminding people that there are solutions outside the state, and not everything has to always be wrapped into, oh, okay, well, the government needs to, come back in and fix the problem. Especially, where it gets crazy, as you just mentioned with schools, is that, these Republicans are like, oh, school's so bad, they're teaching CRT, they're indoctrinating kids for socialism. It's like, but we're going to send them anyway, right? Okay. Right. There's class, there's socialism, but yeah, we're going to send our kids there anyway. So it's just silly things, right? It's so silly.
Yeah, it really is. And and all these false dichotomies that they put upon people about the two parties, especially the African American community. I mean, when I was coming up into the sphere of liberty, it had an uptick because there was a strong conservative Black movement that happened, a couple of years ago. You got the Brandon Tatums, you have the Candace Owens, you have the even the I forgot this other brother's name. I forget the names now, but you have Dinesh D'Souza. He was one of the ones that I liked for a long time because he was he hated socialism. He didn't like them. It's like, yeah, whatever. But there was always these things that would come up where I would have discrepancies with, especially when I started learning about history and like the dichotomy of, hey, the Democrats are the one that they started the KKK, and they're the evil party, they're the bad guys, so y'all should just be Republicans. And and I'm like, look, man, the Republican Party was started. It had its roots in communism. They were the radical red Republicans for a very long time, especially during the after the Civil War and during the Reconstruction era. They came in, and the only reason why you had blacks voting Republican was because they chose them as the welfare class to get go in and expand the welfare state and make of course the southern regions a military occupied spot or whatever. And they just need a new voter base. And it's a conversation of how the party, they said they switched and they flipped and all this and that myth. It's like, no, they never flipped at all. It was just the fact that the welfare class kind of just started changing, as they went along. And as far as the conservative Republicans go, they keep championing the warmongering, Abraham Lincoln. When they started, they always want to refer to back as him, like he's this deity that freed the slaves, and he was just this wonderful guy. And if it wasn't for him, then we would still be enslaved and all this kind of mess. And no, that's not the case at all. He wanted to. The only reason why they were against the slave trade during that time, they didn't want blacks over there in that area where they were. They didn't want to have that labor competition up in the northern regions. And it wasn't like they just said, hey, we're going to get rid of slavery, because they had this epiphany about themselves where they're like, hey, they're people too. That's not the case, because what people fail to realize is that a very small population of people in the South had slaves, and even fewer of them owned them directly, because the land, a lot of them was owned by Northerners, people up in the North, and a lot of taxation and the money that they were making were from the slave trades that they would sanction and send them down there into the fields in the agrarian society so that they can have money. And so it was about power. It was about expanding territories, and they were fighting to get territories in the Midwest, like Chicago area and all this type of stuff, Oklahoma, whatever. And after the war ended, there was this big land rush because, of course, they by way of government bonds and the Union Pacific Railroads, they were just giving out all these incentives and these subsidies to these companies to gather up all the land, in the South. And today, I see the same thing happening, because in Jacksonville, a lot of land is being bought up by people from the North, still getting salaries from the North. But when it comes to this, it comes to Florida, where there's no state tax, they just go ahead and just using the same salary and buying up all this land and sending up their business here. Meanwhile, financially, we got our hands tied behind our backs, and we can't compete within the same market to buy a house. I made a video saying Jack's Homes for Jack's People. That's on my Facebook page. And I put up in the what was the page? I put on one page on the Mises page, National Mises page, and I've been called called a statist. I was called a socialist. I was called grifter. You know what I'm saying? And it was pretty cool, actually. But it was the point of saying that it wasn't because I'm trying to implement more mandates to get these get them from competing. I mean, they're doing what they're supposed to do. They want to come buy property. That's fine. But if you're picking the winners and the losers of this, because in September 2020, the CDC moratorium came, right? And it put the people who own the home and those who are renting out the home, they put them in, at odds against each other, even though they made a contractual obligation to one another, say, hey, I'm going to provide you room and board, and you're going to go ahead and pay the rent. And then when the CARES Act came about, they started bidding higher and higher. Who's going to give out the most welfare? Who's going to give out the most checks? And people who were on the Trump train, during that time, that should have been a big red flag right there, because when he started outbidding and out-democrating the Democrats, it's like, I'm gonna give more, I'm gonna do all this type of stuff, when he should have just went outside of that whole dichotomy, that unilateral decision of who's gonna give more out just to win. You should have been thinking about letting the market breathe and let it regulate these things how they would see fit based on the conditions that were there during that time. And so that would have been the only way to handle it. But no, because like we were saying, government intrusion by way of Republicans or Democrats is going to be tyranny for everybody and all. So when that happened, they started paying people to not work. They furloughed a lot of people for a long time, or they were just outright fired. because they were deemed essential or non-essential. And we all know that there's no such thing as essential or non-essential in the market. If you need this job to feed your family and provide for yourself, that's essential to me. You got to eat.
Right.
And plus, I mean, would you rather have your stuff broken in? Would you have these dudes, going the door blasting, because that's what's going to happen if you take away that thing that's going to keep them from doing heinous things because of the situations that you're creating and, making them desperate. And that's just what happened. My grandmother, her house was broken into. And, not long after they started implementing the CDC moratorium because of that fact. Because a lot of people in that area, they had to foreclose their homes and give it up to these banks. And the third quarter of 2021, October specifically, you had JP Morgan and Chase, you had Bank of America, you got Wells Fargo, and all these banks making big revenue during that time because of the PPP loans, because of the the stimulus checks, because of the employment checks. They didn't make any new profit. It was just they were moving debt from one place into the next, and that was all. They were using that debt to hedge themselves against losses, and so that was pretty genius, but just heinous overall. And so now the person that want to go and rent a house or go and try to get on, really, they're gonna have to just pay off of that back debt anyway, and then go through moral loops and flaming holes to try to get a home that they can own. But you have so many companies buying up property in Jacksonville where it's going to be to rent instead of to own. And that's pretty heinous, on top of the fact that they're using our tax money to promise developments in the downtown area, that's not coming to fruition. They keep having a change of heart. They keep having to do some soul searching. They keep having to, go and renege on this plan and go over here. And meanwhile, people are looking like, hey, we just got the 6 cent increase in our gas. Now you're punishing us to travel. Now you're giving out $450,000 of our tax money to this electric vehicle company so they can get a tax break and give out a meager wage. That's not accounting for the inflation that's been rising. And so they think that we're getting a win, but we're getting a pay cut every time. And they're pricing us out of the market because of that, because they call us carbon financiers, people that's just contributing to the damnation of the environment and all this type of stuff. And it's ridiculous. Like I said before, I have no problem with electric vehicles and electric cars or whatever. That's all fine and dandy. But again, they're picking the winners and the losers of what market comes out because they're manipulating it. And that's the message overall that I want to send. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great summary of so many different issues. It ties into what's intellectual property. No, it's really important though, because you really actually went at length to describe just how much the government's controlled the economy in terms of, manipulate what was happening, affected people down the rug and back again, in terms of just making it difficult for people to afford to pay, for, their property taxes if, they're someone who's renting out, to banks, of course, buying up properties so people can't afford it once rent became due. I mean, so yeah, it's just been a crazy mess, and the effects of that too have been more local governments like Jacksonville trying to capitalize on that and trying to put incentives toward outside the area or state companies to come in and buy and develop. And it's a crazy thing. It happens in all types of places around the U.S. Local governments trying to give subsidies for sports stadiums or ports or whatever, taking your money and picking winners and losers instead of individuals being able to pick what it is they actually like. So it's a serious problem.
Yeah, plus in Florida, we got this minimum wage uptick. It's going to be $15 minimum wage by the time I think 2026 comes around, and that's a whole other thing about how you're going to price more people out of the market, and it's really ridiculous. And so yeah, and most of these are bipartisan decisions, whether it be Republican or Democrat. A lot of these decisions were still made by those two wings of the same bird, and these are just the little things that how you mentioned how we're going to separate ourselves. That's the way we separate ourselves, letting them know that that's all fine and dandy, but look at what they're costing the people. Just average people, just like you and me, who are the wealth of the city. They're just extracting that and letting us bleed slowly, really. And yeah.
So when it comes to your personal intellectual journey, who would you say would be, toward the top three of, scholars or authors or people of that nature who have really influenced and impacted your own philosophy and how you think about the world?
It would be Philip Lee, Brian McClanahan, and top three. This really is really hard. I don't want to say top three, but because it's like you go through so many. Yeah, exactly. You know how it is with us, man. We just get authors on authors on authors and books on books on books that we can just recite, in the back of our heads. But I'll say right now, what's essential from right now, because you got old Woods, you got old Tom Woods up in there. You got Philip
Yeah.
Lee in there, and then you have Brian McClanahan. It will be those three right now. Tom Woods, Philip Lee, and Brian McClanahan. I'll say those three right now are the ones I'm referencing the most as I'm going through my campaign, and that I use as resources to help find the solutions. Now, the honorable mentions, outside of the top three, not to mention, you have, of course, Peter Schiff, Mike Maharrey, Brother Mike, you know what I mean? You have, who else? Doggone Thomas Sowell, you know what I mean? And really specifically Thomas Sowell, to the point where, as far as that goes, it's about de-aggregating data. It's about, okay, we have these things, like, for example, getting that, I guess not that skill, but like an insight for him to de-aggregate the data and then see what's really going on, for them to give that census towards you, is when, during when COVID was pretty popping and everything was kind of crazy. I think it was last year, when they were trying to tell me that all these businesses are booming, all these, look at these, in spite of COVID, all these businesses are just coming up and local businesses is thriving because of it. Yeah, no way, because I de-aggregate the data, and what happened was these were just little businesses that were they were committing a lot of fraud for the PPP loans. So you have a bunch of these new businesses popping up out of nowhere to come get this check. Businesses that never existed before COVID even came about, and they were reported for a lot of fraud, and millions of dollars were given out to these businesses, and it was for the purpose of fraud. Because of course, when the government is giving out money, it leaves room for more fraud and more debauchery, especially with like voter fraud. They want to keep nationalizing the voting process, and doesn't make it any easy for local candidates like myself and Eric Parker and Pastor Tub Rorabaugh. He's running it at large, number 5. It's Jeremy Rorabaugh, but in Jacksonville he's known as Tub, and not a real libertarian podcast. They even interviewed him, and he has a weekly podcast with my chairman on a bunch of libertarian topics. I think they just went through a series called 25 Topics Libertarians Can Tackle. And of course, I watch those guys because they sharpen my sword all the time. But digressing, it was just that example of de-aggregating the data and seeing what's really happening to give a proper perspective of what's going on. So yeah, Thomas O was really, really good for that. As far as Brian McClanahan and Philip Lee go, those guys really helped me as far as the historical context of what happened back then and what's happening now, so that when I go and talk to people, I let them know that this is not brand new at all, and this has happened before. It's going to be happening again. And just like how Peter Schiff said, you can almost damn near predict what's going to happen. You can almost predict the next crash. You can predict the next boom bust cycle because of its historical precedents before. And that's why I really I talk to these, not talk to them. I wish I could just sit there and talk to them, but just studying these guys and taking their information and putting it into a small, like big ideas into a small scope. Jacksonville is big, but it's not. It's big land wise. It's really massive. It's really a ghost town. It's like just about on average, just to round it up, 1,000 square feet of land in Jacksonville. But as far as the population goes, it's not even 1 million people. There's about 850,000 people in Jacksonville. So that's why every third person you see is someone you knew in freaking elementary school. I mean, it's like, it's a ghost town, So yeah, so when you take these ideas, such as Austrian economics, and like you mentioned earlier, the unseen consequences of their decisions, and put them in a small scope, and I just make it smaller and smaller and smaller. I'll tell people like Peter Schiff, he talks about the $30 trillion debt that's happening. And see, this one, Mike Maharrey, shout out to him. I met up with him before, and when my campaign was really kind of starting off and getting its feet in, he was letting me know that he didn't tell me this. It's something that I just picked up from interacting with him. He let me know that, you just have to master your message, and I talked about the Peter Schiff podcast and the 10th Amendment Center and himself. When they're speaking, they go from this, there's a model and there's a template that they kind of more or less follow when they give out their message. You know, they talk about what government's doing and what the debt is and how what their legislation does in order to, you know, inflame that debt and how it's affecting the people when it trickles down, down, and down. And I'm like, okay, all right, cool. You know, I'm just sitting there because, you know, you talking to me long enough, I just start being like, whoa, oh my God. And you're like, what happened? And I'm just like, I'm just thinking about what you told me. And I'm just coming to these conclusions where, because my brain starts kind of clicking. And he gave me the idea of mastering your message and using a template for everyone to follow and use it as a mantra to get people in the same mind frame as you are, so that when you describe what's happening, they can go ahead and refer back to that. And just for example, Jacksonville has $3.6 billion worth of assets, but it has $3.6 billion worth of assets, but it got $6.4 billion worth of debt that it has to pay. So it puts us at a net negative of $2.8 billion. In order for everyone to pay it off in the city of Jacksonville, we have to take on a tax burden of $10,100. And this is why nationwide we're known as Jacksonville, the sinkhole city, because it has more debt than credit. And then from then on, I go ahead and, you know, and talk about these things right here and how it affects us directly. And people get in the mind frame of, wow, okay, yeah, this is a big problem. And yeah, it's a reflection of those things. So from those guys that I listen to and talk to on a daily basis, they help me really master the way that I convey the message to people about what I'm doing for the liberty movement. And yeah, and it's kind of created a sort of really special niche with the Libertarian Party of Duval County. You know, we have 3 different candidates who go approach things in 3 different ways. And we're so effective in the way that we do these things. And we have such a great team behind us. And they do nothing but nurture us and point us in a direction, the way we can get our message across. Like my chairman, D.L. Cummings, he even put me on to you guys. You know what I mean? You and Fudd. And I was at his house one time, and he was like, so you ever heard about these guys right here? You heard about the philosopher? And I was like, I don't know these people. What the hell you know? And then he ended up playing I did not consent. No, that's how he's played Mask Order. Then I ended up finding I did not consent. That's when I found y'all the first time at the state con in this past summer. And I was like, you guys are you know, me a few drinks and just being like, you know, a fangirl and just really kind of like showing my appreciation about y'all's message. And I don't know, D.L. Cummings, he has a way of specializing, you know, and kind of tailoring, you know, he looks at who you are as a person, and then somehow in his infinite wisdom, you know, he kind of directs you into the way where you can be much more, you know, we can utilize your talents really, and the people that he can link you with, you know, he doesn't tell you outright. He just kind of gives you a breadcrumb, and then you can go ahead, you know, take off from there. And I really thank him for that. Of course, these things he didn't tell me. It's just what I picked up on, and it's kind of, you know, putting in the back of my head about how to be a leader such as he, because he's talking about leadership, a lot about leadership, man. So him and Marcus Rear, the vice chairman, it is to be, you know, acquainted with someone's aspirations so that you can better direct them to the goal that they really want, and how we can build bridges with people and have civil discourses and come at them from a way of, you know, like that. And as opposed to being keyboard killer, you know, on here. And because I was bad, man, before I used to wait to write diss tracks to people, you know, on these, you know, these sites and forums, you know, and I couldn't wait to write a diss track tape, you know what I'm saying, to the city council and put names out and all this type of stuff, you know. But it's more now of, instead of calling out names and being debaucherous over the microphone, it's more of, what are you going to do to, like you say, to separate yourself from the pack? We can always shout on the mountaintops who we have a problem with, but it's a different story when you just show the people why you're much more valuable than them. You know, excuse my voice is breaking. Ew. Why you're, you know, what you're bringing to the table is much more valuable. And that's the thing about free market capitalism. You know what I mean? You bring value. You know what I'm saying? You bring value to people to solve a problem that you see, so that people can benefit from that. It's about having people better off than were before you came in with the idea and with your ingenuity and entrepreneurial spirit that you bring to the people. And so I wanted to bring it to the people of Jacksonville, because I was on national news a lot. You know how we all were, you know, looking at what's happening around the nation, around the union, and around all this type of stuff. But I kind of stopped that, and I became a lot more localized, taking the same concept that I learned from, you know, the Mises Institute and stuff like that, and just go ahead and tailor make it to where I am right now. And it's been working wonders, man. And the thing about Libertarian Party in Duval County, we're the only libertarians there, really. So it's like we have to go and make some more libertarians or people, put people on these concepts. I don't really just outright always tell people that I'm libertarian and stuff like that. I introduce them to these concepts first to get their to get the gears working in their heads, to learn how to separate between solutions that the government has, and as opposed to the ingenuity that they have the potential to go ahead and utilize for themselves with the concepts that we're giving them. And you can find then where you are within that, and then go from there. And then, that's what it is. Because like I said before, there's a little bit of a burden of performance with our party. And, while they, I put the little seeds in their head, they make their decision about where they fall and whatever persuasion, they're seeing what we're doing. They're seeing the benefits of what we have to offer from our ingenuity, from our solution base, like how Maj Toure, a solutionary lifestyle, that you have to live, and not a protest, burn your buildings down, and all this type of mess, or ethno supremacy, black supremacy, white supremacy. These are foolish things that government perpetuates. You know what I mean? And it seems like I'm going around a big circle, but I'm just being thorough and tying it in with the kind of journey that I've had coming into the liberty movement. And same thing with concerns about race and gender, all this type of stuff. The government creates these political coalitions with people that they hurt and harm through their tyranny, and from there they create this divisive, divide and conquer strategy, and they create new voter bases that will fight against one another and create new civil wars every 4 years. And it's about my team, this team, and all this kind of mess. Because even me, before I came to the liberty movement, I was an ethno supremacist. I would say, I'm a black supremacist, black supremacy. But it wasn't on the fact of, hating the next, hating the next person. It was more of, I felt like, because I've always had a type of separatist blood in me, but it was but I thought it was race at the time. I was thinking that it was a problem of the way we've been biologically programmed to think a certain way, and we can never get along if we just keep living together. So we got to separate, man. We got to separate, and things will just magically get better, and we're gonna have an utopia, right? Yeah, no. It's about government planting these things in people's minds and creating a new welfare basis to create this new voter base. And whether you have LGBTQ, whether you have the NAACP, BLM. What else? I mean, it goes on and on and on and on. And I say, how about we just, separate ourselves from all this stuff? Like I said, there's a post I wrote a long time ago. It was just like, the only thing that we owe to each other as a species, as a humanity, is the love and respect to, for one another, to be custodians of civilization, and to build, for one another, because that's pretty much the only thing that can bring us together, is to just take government out of the equation. Because as long as they're there, they're going to create these differences. They're going to create these things amongst each other, make it seem like, it's a black thing, it's a white thing, it's an Asian thing, and well, they tried with the Asians, but that just didn't work. I mean, they tried, in Washington, they're not considered white now. And like this whole thing about race is just ridiculous. It's just a U.S. Census Bureau terms to categorize chattel property and who is a ward of the state. You know what I mean? So it's just, it just really makes no sense. And they use it as a weapon against us to really make it seem like it's the problem with the individual or to this whole group of people. But no, it's the institution that perpetuates it. And we would have much more peace if we just take them out of the equation and see how much we have to offer to each other, and then build from there. And so, yeah, going back to Thomas Sowell, Brian McClanahan, Tom Woods, and Philip Lee, these guys have condensed these issues, and from their lessons, I am able to, with a laser focus, see what's happening in my city, in my own backyard, and then apply to that. That's why running for city council was so important, because what you can do is see the issues happening right then, and you apply these things. It becomes it's easier over time to just see and identify it. As you ain't got to look at the Wall Street journals and all this type of stuff. You can go to newsforjacks.com, type it in there. You're going to see the very same things happening everywhere else, because government is there. As long as government is there, these problems are going to arise. So condense, these concepts that we have, put it into a much more specified area with a laser focus, and go from there.
Well, I really appreciate your thorough explanation of that, Tracy. It's excellent. I think it's inspiring. I think for everybody to know that no matter what background you come from, the principles of liberty are something that can really impact your life and lead to peace and prosperity and great relationships and friendships. And it's not just some big picture thinking metaphysical thing. It's real life practice. So if people want to follow your work, check out what you're doing, support you, Tracy, where's the best place for them to do that?
They can go to my Facebook page, my candidate page. You type in the username, type in RTR4CC, Ron Tracy for Jax, Ron Tracy Robison. It's a big long thing because think about it, it's a pain to type in Ronald Tracy for Robison for City Council District 8. It's kind of painful. So
I did put the link in the video description, so there should be a link to that page that you just mentioned then on the video below, so you can check it out there too. So that's your main page right now is on that Facebook page. Okay,
that's
perfect.
It. The Facebook page, it's my personal Facebook page, but the candidate page, like I said, RTR4CC. Type it in my candidate page. We get the biggest updates. Also go to rontracyforjax.com for videos, for articles that I've written, for products such as T-shirts and stuff to help the campaign. If you want to give a free will donation of your choosing from the kindness of your heart, it will go a long way, and I'll be eternally grateful.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Tracy. Really appreciate you spending time with me today, just sharing your story and letting us know what's going on, in that Florida man region of Jacksonville, which I know has quite the reputation. So, all right, take care, everybody. I will see y'all for the next cast. I'm not sure when it's going to be. We'll find out. Who knows? But maybe next week. All right, take care.
ZeroState.